Brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. Informed by science. Guided by insight. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to another really exciting episode of Honest Money. We're talking all things tax-free savings accounts today. We don't normally do kind of really time-sensitive topics, but I think it's a really good time for us to talk about tax-free savings. We're getting to the end of February, and that's an important time for people who want to top up their tax-free savings accounts. And I must say, I'm not an absolute expert on tax-free savings accounts. So I decided I need to bring in. I don't want to call you heavyweight, Gabriel, because that sounds like an insult, but I needed to bring in some heavyweight. Gabriel Botha, Business Development Manager at Prescient Investment Management. Thank you so much for joining.
Awesome, Warren. Thanks for having me. It's quite an honor to be on the show.
So I think, we hate jargon on our show. So let's just start with, I've already been blabbing on about tax-free savings accounts. At its most basic, what are we talking about when we're talking about tax-free savings accounts?
Well, tax-free savings account is basically a vehicle for all SA investors to invest their money in, and they're incentivized to invest in this by receiving no tax, so tax-free growth on all income, dividends, and capital gains. I think it's an incentive from government just to say, hey, save up a little bit more, as we already have a massive problem in South Africa, a big savings problem. Not enough retirement funds, etc., etc. So this is just one more way to incentivize the savers.
And I mean, I must say, whenever you talk to salary earners who are paying tax or anybody else who's paying tax, they're always looking for ways to save tax. And to me, this is a real gift to taxpayers because, as you say, I mean, you're not getting a benefit by making the contributions. It's different to a retirement fund where SARS gives you a bit of a tax break for the contribution, but every cent that you put into that tax-free savings account, all the dividends, all the interest, all the capital growth, all of that is tax-free. And so if you can allow that investment to grow over, let's say, years or decades, one day when you start drawing the money out, every single cent comes into your back pocket completely tax-free. And to me, I think, we should pay some tax, but if we can legally pay the least amount of tax possible, we should take every advantage we possibly are given by SARS. And this is one of those no-brainers.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the no-brainers, like you say. There's definitely, so you can't claim your tax back on the contributions you made, but it's really awesome that you have, for example, no Regulation 28 limits on your head, so you can go 100% offshore and just leave it there for decades. And like you're saying, really have that benefit of no limitations on the investment. So that's one side. And also the investment's 100% liquid, which is also another different compared to the retirement side. With liquidity being a big story, it's kind of tough for the savers who want their money, but it's great in the long term having tax-free savings. Just having that benefit if need be.
Let's just talk about that there. So you mentioned Regulation 28. So what that is the laws that govern retirement funds. And it dictates how much you can have in cash, bonds, property, shares, how much you can have in South Africa, how much you can have overseas. In contrast, with a tax-free savings account, you can. I mean, I would hate it if people did that, but you could put all of your money into cash. But you could also, as you're saying, you could go 100% into global shares exclusive and put all of your money, although it'll be rands and you'll get rands back one day, the underlying investment will be in the global markets.
Exactly. Well, so where we see a lot of the people use it is, for example, if you use it in conjunction with your retirement annuity. Currently, that Regulation 28 limits at 45% for the investor, where they can take monies offshore in their retirement annuity, and then they blend it with a tax-free savings account. Currently, the annual limit is 36,000 Rand, so you got 3,000 Rand per month to basically take 100% offshore. Effectively, you can increase your offshore exposure to within your retirement saving if you use it as a value add to your RA.
So let's just talk about the only thing about these accounts that I don't like is the name, because they say tax-free savings account. And so a lot of people are mistaken in thinking that this means it's a bank account and they can only put it in a fixed deposit or a money market account or something. So let's just talk about what are the underlying investments that you can choose for a tax-free savings account?
Well, like I said, there's no limits at all. So you can invest in unit trust shares, whatever's on offer at the list platform that's available wherever you're going to use or open up your tax-free savings account. Whatever they've got on offer, that's what you can invest in. And one nice thing about the tax-free savings account is if it's in unit trust, for example, there's no performance fees applicable to these investments either. So they actually open up a whole new class range within the industry to avail these funds for investors.
So if we just jump to the unit trust world for a second, so that means you can invest in, and I think most of the time most unit trusts are also offered as tax-frees, and it'll be everything, as I said, from a money market account right through to a global equity unit trust. And I think that's an important point, is that you can blend those underlying investments as well. You're not going to be obliged to say, well, for the last 5 years it was a global equity unit trust that I've chosen, and this year I would like some South African exposure, but no, I can't blend it. You can actually, mix and match as you wish inside that tax-free.
100%, yeah. The investors got the freedom, and that's what South African, or a lot of South African investors want. They want that freedom. They're kind of scared of Regulation 28, the potential risk that it could have, bringing in prescribed assets again, like it was back in the heyday. There's a lot of fear. And I think this freedom alleviates a lot of that fear for the average investor.
So you mentioned the phrase liquidity a little bit earlier, and I think we must just expand on that a little bit. So liquidity, means you can access the money. And so the interesting thing about tax-free savings accounts is, as you're saying, they're not the same as a retirement fund where you can only start to access the money at age 55, and then there's all sorts of rules around this. You can start the investment tomorrow, and you can draw the money, let's just say, a week later. I would hate that if someone actually is doing that. And I think we must just maybe talk about some of the things to know, the little bit of fine print around tax-free savings with this access to the money. So you're 100% right. You can always access the money, but it does come at a cost, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's actually a big caveat with regards to the maximum contributions for the investor. Being that, so let's say, for example, an investor maximum allowance is 36,000 Rand for the year. In Jan or in Feb or 1st of March, when the new season begins, he invests 36,000. If he withdraws 30,000 from that, he can't invest later on in the year another 30. He used his maximum limit for the year. So it's a once-off contribution. If you withdraw, it's a use it or lose it situation for the investor. So best to invest and rather keep it invested and really try not to use your savings account for short-term, like an emergency fund or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, I can't agree more. I think it's if you're going to put money in there, this is the money that you leave for at least a decade or 2 or 3. And ideally, you, as you were saying earlier, you make it part of your whole retirement planning, where you say, this is money that I can use one day when I'm no longer working. If you're lucky and you hit your financial freedom at age 45, well done. But for the rest of us, if you hit it at age 65, that you say, well, I'm actually going to draw from this on a monthly basis or yearly, whatever it is. But certainly don't use it for very short-term investments. And I think that's also, and this is my, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but this is my views. That's why money market accounts are a terrible place for tax-free savings accounts, because a cash investment, whether it's a money market account or a money market unit trust or anything very low risk, it's great that you're not going to see losses in the short term, but the downside is your capital is not going to grow anything like the inflation rate. So you might just match inflation. Whereas, investing 100% in shares, the likelihood is you're getting 5 or 6% a year above inflation for the next decade or 2 or 3. Yes, it comes with massive volatility. There'll be years when your investment is down 15 or 20%, and then you're going to hate having listened to me on the show. But the point is, over a decade, you won't regret putting the money into shares. And I think that's the key thing with tax-free savings accounts, is they are long-term. And you're right, Gabriel, that the liquidity is a big issue. South Africans hate being told what to do. So anything that gives us access to our money on our terms is great. What I would say is, you're allowed to and you're able to draw the money, but please don't plan to draw the money. Obviously, if the world falls apart and you desperately need access to money, then by all means, that's what you've got savings for. But if you can, you draw from your emergency funds, etc., first. You don't draw from your tax-free first.
100%. Warren, another thing on the short term versus the long term kind of investing in a tax-free savings account is the tax savings benefits in the short term. Since the inception of tax-free savings account, it was in 2015. If you take the financial year since 2015, it's been a full 6 years. I think the maximum contribution that you could have contributed so far is just over 195,000 Rand. That's your max, excluding growth. So for the investor, that's the maximum they could have. So even if they're in a, let's say, like an income kind of fund yielding 10%, just to make the math a bit easier, they could have close to 20,000 Rand earnings or on interest for a year. And yet that's still under the annual limit for the average investor that's under 65. They get an interest exclusion per year of 23,800 Rand. So even if they invest conservatively and in the short term, there's not a lot of tax benefits by being there. So using it for short-term purposes, like saving for a holiday or emergency fund, you're actually wasting the benefits within your tax-free savings account. And then at the long term, at the end, for example, if you use it for your child's education or ad hoc to your retirement fund, that's where the real big hitting tax-free savings will be. And that's at the end.
And I think it's an important point that, if you're paying a higher rate of income tax and you're at, age 50 and you need to start drawing on that tax-free savings account and you've been diligent on your savings, it could be that you're giving away normally, without a tax-free savings account, you're giving away 18% of the drawings as capital gains tax. And in this instance, you're paying zero. And so it really is a powerful point. And I think, maybe we should just talk a little bit. I don't want to put you on the spot, but how do we choose a tax-free savings account? One of the key principles for me is going to be, we've touched on it now, it must be long-term. I don't think you should be choosing short-term, but I also think, I think costs are a big issue. And we need to say to people, when you're choosing a tax-free, don't go into something that's costing you 5% a year, because the fees are going to destroy some of the benefit of the growth. So I think costs is a big issue as well.
So firstly, if I was an investor, I would say, look at the cost. What's this entity charging me for this tax-free savings account? I know banks offer them, all kind of life houses. Everyone is offering a tax-free savings account. So firstly, it's that. Watch out for the administration fee within your tax-free savings account. And then secondly, watch out for the fund costs within it. If the fund cost is not performing well net of fees, so that's after fees have been deducted, then maybe look elsewhere or look for another fund. And then obviously I would say ease of use. Do they allow for monthly contributions, etc., etc.? Just basic ease. And then obviously bigger variety of investments available for the investor would also be a great value add. If I can only choose of 3 solutions, I would rather have the option, like you're saying, South Africans don't like to be told what to do. So the more the merrier on the investment option side.
And I think there's an important point there. If you are in a position where you've got a tax-free savings account and you hadn't heard the show and you put all the money into fixed deposit at a bank in a tax-free savings account, if you want to make a change, the law allows you to make a change. That's a critical point. Secondly, don't do a withdrawal from the investment. You need to do a transfer. And that's a very important point because Gabriel's mentioned use it or lose it. So you don't want to do a withdrawal because then you've lost that capacity. What you want to do is a transfer from one product provider to another, or even inside the product provider from one fund to another. That is a switch or a transfer, not a withdrawal. So it's a key point there that you make sure your documentation, the forms that you're filling out, anything that you're doing online, it's about switching or transfer, not withdrawal. And a few times it's happened where people have said, well, I hated the fixed deposit. I realized it was a mistake and I withdrew the money. And that's already, you can't come back from that. That capacity is now lost.
Yeah, it's currently a lifetime limit of 500,000 Rand. So every time you withdraw, you're kind of using your 500,000 lifetime limit. It will probably be increased in future, but that's the current amount. So yes, like you said, you can always move it. It's not like it's a fatal mistake if you invested and it's done forever. You can switch within your tax-free savings account. You can move it to a new platform where there's more bigger or just wider array of investment options if you want more global or other kind of investings. But I think at the end of the day, it's just to kind of change the average investor's mindset around the use of a tax-free savings account, that it's more beneficial for long-term use instead of short-term.
So, Gabriel, we're running out of time, and I've got 2 questions to ask you. I'm going to give you the last question first, so I'll give you some time to prepare. And it's the trick question for every new guest to the show, and that is, if you could meet your 21-year-old self, what would be the one life lesson you would like to give yourself, knowing what you know today? So I'm going to leave that with you just to think about now, and then just anything else that you think we should be discussing or explaining around tax-free savings accounts.
I think we touched on most of the topics regarding the regulation and the laws around tax-free savings account. But if I was 21 again, a young student, I would instantly save at least 25% of my income. I would save it consistently. If there was a tax-free savings account back then, I would have opened one instantly and try and max it out every year and invest. I am quite an aggressive investor, so I would go for something easy like an index fund tracking something like the MSCI index, which is a basket of global developing market indexes. And I'll just leave it there. And the big thing is just don't touch it. Don't disturb the compounding interest. That's a superpower.
I think that's a absolutely fantastic point and a great way to wrap up. Gabriel Botha, Business Development Manager at Prescient Investment Management, thank you so much for joining us. I think we've talked to our listeners a lot, and hopefully we get a whole lot of new people jumping on the tax-free bandwagon. It's an important thing, and that we should all be taking advantage of.
Awesome. Thanks, Warren, for being here. It's been brilliant.
Brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. Informed by science. Guided by insight. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.